In this week's Backlot episode, we're going to be talking about my favorite vintage lens and whether or not you should pick one up for yourself. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Wild 7 Studios Backlot. This is your home for all things independent filmmaking, gear tutorials, tips, and vintage lenses. Which brings us to our topic today, and that's going to be one of my favorite ones, and we're going to be talking about a specific vintage lens. So, if you've watched the channel before, it's probably my favorite thing to talk about. I love them, and I mentioned a few weeks ago that I was going to start going over specific lenses and talk about some of my favorite ones, some of the ones I think are really unique, some that are kind of standout lenses that I think are a little underappreciated that maybe you can add to your kit and would be a positive addition for you. So without further ado, we're going to talk about this week's lens. And I wanted to go into specifically my favorite wide-angle vintage lens. Like with everything, there's a lot of pluses and minuses to whether you get vintage lenses to cinema primes or like a cinema lens, whether that be a prime or a zoom. Now, a lot of these issues become a little bit more apparent when you go to wide-angle lenses with vintage lenses. So one of the issues is there's a lack of uniformity with your f-stops. If you buy a set of cine primes, say like Nissi or some Aris or anything like that, a lot of times they try to make them as uniform as possible. And what I mean by that is that f-stop, the apertures, they'll open up to the same amount across all the lenses. When you have a set like the Pentax Takamores, they're all over the place. I have some that open to 4.5, 2.8. I have one that's 1.4, a 1.8. It's kind of all over the place. They weren't designed to be a set of cinema lenses. They were photo lenses. So whatever lens you had on your camera was the lens you were using and the look you were going for. So they didn't really make them to have a uniform look across the board. Now, one of the other issues is that they weren't really designed for filming video and to be moving around a lot. They were designed to kind of be still, take a photo, and then move on. You'll notice this anytime you're using a vintage wide-angle lens and you don't have a matte box on it. Like that's almost a caveat to using any vintage wide-angle lens is that you almost have to, 98% of the time you're going to have to use a matte box. You're going to catch a lot of glares, reflections, weird things like that. They weren't coded for that, and they're just not deep enough as well. The glass, the front optics, are a little closer to the front of the lens than say a cinema lens would have the front optics. And then another big issue, and this is just kind of a personal one, it's not necessarily a make or break issue with everyone, but a lot of vintage wide-angle lenses, they're just not as fast as the other lenses and sets. Speed wasn't something that they really worried about too much. A lot of these lenses were used, like if you were going to have a 24 or 20 millimeter photo lens, odds are you're shooting like portraiture and you're doing families and like class photos and things like that, where you want a wide group. You're going to set it down, you're going to light it. A lot of these people were shooting outside as well, so they didn't need the fastest apertures. They could shoot it at f4, f5.6 and get away with it and not have any issues. So today, the actual specific lens that we're going to be talking about is this right here. And this is the Minolta Rokkor 17 millimeter f4. I am a huge fan of this lens. It's the MC Rokkor, just to let you know, not the MD Rokkor. Little bit of the differences is the MD Rokkors are made with plastic. These MC Rokkors, they're made out of metal. It's an absolute tank. I'll get some close-up shots of this so that you guys can see a little bit more. But it's a really fantastic lens. I don't know exactly when this lens was manufactured, but if I had to guess, I would say 1969. You can look on the serial numbers on a lot of these lenses, and the last two numbers a lot of times are the year it was manufactured in, and that would make a lot of sense because that's when they were making the MC Rokkors. The aperture on this one goes from f4 and then closes down to f16. Not a lot of situations where you need that, and I honestly don't shoot closed all the way either with a lot of things, but f4 seems to be the sweet spot with this lens. Now, wide-angle lenses aren't for everyone, and they're not for every situation. One of the situations you want to use them in is lack of space. You can get close focus better on a wide-angle lens than you can on a telephoto lens. Let me see what the close focus is. Yeah, the close focus on this lens is about 1 foot away. Yeah, about a quarter of a meter away. So it's a pretty impressive close focus. We're talking about that far. Uh, with other lenses, you can't do that. I believe the Helios is about 4 or 5 feet is the closest it can get focus. Then you have some other lenses, some of the telephoto lenses, it's 10, 12, 13, 14 feet away where you can get the close focus on those lenses. Now, another reason you may or may not want to use wide angle lenses is for what they do to faces and what they do in like the portrait look. It's not a flattering look, and it's not for everything. A lot of people don't like being shot with wide angle lenses. It's not their preference, and I can completely understand why. You'll see certain films that use wide angle lenses and certain filmmakers who lean into it. Spielberg is a big fan. He likes to use like 18, 28 millimeter lenses quite a bit. And then you have filmmakers who live in the wide angle, and I mean that in the true sense of the word, like Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. The trailers just dropped recently to his new film Digger, and I was watching that, and some of the cinematography in it is really interesting. There's a couple shots in there. There's a close-up of John Goodman and a couple close-ups of Tom Cruise, and they are really, really wide-angle lenses. And I mean, like, really wide-angle. The camera must be like this close to them. That's how wide the lenses are. And that's just something that director leans into. It's something he likes. I think he likes how it distorts people. It makes them a little bizarre. It makes them feel a little comedic almost. Another big thing, and another cool reason you would want to use wide angle lenses over like say telephoto or neutral lenses is motion. You're going to feel the motion of a wide angle lens a lot more than you're going to feel the motion of a telephoto lens, especially if you're moving in and out. If you're pushing in on a say 135 millimeter lens, it's not going to be the most apparent, especially if you have autofocus or a really good focus puller who's keeping it in focus. The movement's not going to be a lot. It's going to be very subtle. On a wide angle lens, you're going to feel the movement a lot. You're going to feel the motion right away. It's going to be very apparent. And sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes that's what the cinematographer director is going for. If you just want a little bit of tension by a little push in, maybe going with a wider angle lens is the move, you know, going with a 28 over a 50 or a 24 over a 35. You know, these are those little situations where a cinematographer might want to choose one lens over the other. One of the reasons I really like this lens over some of the other wide angle lenses I have is the lack of distortion it has on the edges. A lot of wide angle lenses, one of the issues that they have is that they start to get really distorted on the end, and then they get so distorted we eventually call them fisheye lenses. Those are like your 4 millimeter to 16 millimeter lenses, and I have a 16 millimeter fisheye. It's in my Takamore set. I like it. It's a fun lens, but it's not one I grab very often because it is such a weird lens and such a weird look. It's not for everything. It's not my favorite, you know. It's fun in music videos, dream sequences, things where things need to be psychedelic and a little surreal. But for the most part, I don't really grab that lens that often, and definitely not as much as I grab the 17. I like the 17 a lot more, this Minolta Rokkor 17. I like it a lot more. It has a lot less distortion on the ends. It looks a lot more neutral, and it just matches the rest of the Rokkor set even better. So that's another big plus, is that it really does kind of match the color tone and look of the other lenses, especially the fall off out of focus. And I'm a big fan of that. As usual, like I always do, I like to go test the lens. I decided to test this one in downtown LA, run around the streets of LA and get some cool footage for you guys, shoot some stuff around here, around the studio, like I said, and show you some of the things that this lens can and can't do. So go ahead and check that out. All right, now that we checked this lens out, you can see what it can do. You can see why I like it, why I'm a fan of it. It's a lot of fun. If you're looking for one of your own, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you're looking at. There's a lot of really cool vintage lenses out there. Leica makes, or excuse me, lights. Yeah, the Leica R's are awesome. There's who else makes some really cool wide angle lenses? Canon has some cool wide angle lenses. Nikon has some cool wide angle lenses. There's a lot of really cool vintage wide angle lenses out there. So snag yours up, test them out. Send me a comment below. I'd love to hear and see what you guys are picking up and what you're buying. And yeah, we got some new videos coming out in the next couple of weeks. So do us a favor, hit that subscribe button down below. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.